Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. I'm here with Johnny. How has your past few days been, Johnny?
Hey, what's going on, Garrett? Yeah, everything's been good, as they say over here. Kind of same old at this point. We've kind of gotten into the groove where um, we had let a week of basketball pass in between each episode. School started for me here recently, so got that in the mix. So always nice to kind of hop on here for 30 minutes to an hour and just talk it up with some basketball. What's going on with you, man?
Yeah, pretty much same old, like you addressed. And now we're both like in the school mindset, so things are going to be getting a little bit hectic, but it is what it is. And we're gonna move on to the start of the show. We're gonna start with our first topic. Obviously, it has been a year since, and I don't even like really saying it, but it's been a year since pretty much we all know the stuff, Kobe Bryant. Um, but the cool thing, what I will say, is that a lot of people have still been, addressing how much of an impact he's had on everybody, and that's something that I like to see personally. What have you made about everyone with, such positivity around Kobe for the past year?
So I've always known that Kobe was one of the biggest figures and that he's had this impact, but I didn't realize the magnitude of the impact. Um, I mean, I don't even want to take us. I kind of you alluded to earlier. Like I don't even want to go back to the day it happened. But if I do, I mean, the whole world was just like somber and in shock. Like everybody knew it had happened, and everybody was so quiet. It was like it affected everybody like they knew Kobe personally. So I think that just shows how well respected he is around the league and around the world for that matter. Between the whole girl dad comments that were going viral and all that, he's just had such a positive impact on the lives of others, and I think it's great to see that people are showing that respect back towards him now.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, obviously, I mean, he had a big impact on both of us individually, but I think it put into perspective what a lot of people thought about him, internationally as well. Like, it's not just something that, oh, you watch NBA, so you know Kobe. It's not like, oh, you're from the United States, so you know Kobe. It's like, no, people in countries around the world are still being impacted by, this. And I think just the whole thing that, like, I think even added to it is the fact that, like, we were just talking about him that, like, the day before it happened. Because, obviously LeBron was on the Lakers and he just passed Kobe in the all-time points. So it's like we're all talking about this. I remember when I went to a Bulls Kings game like 2 days before, and the Bulls scored like 81 points. I literally put on my Snap story. I'm like, well, we would have tied Kobe if it was like 14 years and 2 days ago or something like that. So like everyone was already talking about him, and then it happened, and then that just like added to the fact. Um, but no, I think like everybody's like positivity about him and how much he meant to them has been like something that's been really cool to see, and hopefully we continue to see more of that.
Yeah, I think it's great to see people share personal anecdotes and stories that just wouldn't have been shown otherwise or talked about otherwise, right? Like we cherish these moments one on one with these superstars when we get to hang out with them. Not us personally, but your everyday NBA player or your superstar, right? That gets to hang out with them and has all these personal stories they can tell, but they're not necessarily talked about until we see something like this happen. And it's a shame. I think it teaches us to start talking about these moments and putting them out there earlier, and not waiting until something tragic like this happens and now we have to talk about it. Like, let's cherish each other while we're around. Let's talk about each other while we're around. Let's share these good memories while we're around. Let's not wait until it's too late and then bring them up. And I think we've just been able to take so many life lessons from such a tragic event.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I don't know why my camera is acting weird, but I think we're just gonna keep going. I mean, it seems like my audio is still working, and that's like the biggest thing here. But um, I mean, we're gonna move on. We have a lot of topics to discuss today. The next thing is talking about the Utah Jazz, who at the time we're making this, is currently on a 10-game winning streak. They're currently the best record in basketball. And I mean, something like their depth has always been kind of skeptical from a lot of people on the outside, but they didn't really make any moves in this offseason like, say, Phoenix did, or the Warriors, or, um, like Portland and stuff like that. Like, they didn't do really anything. And right now, they look like a team poised to compete for a title. So, what do you make of the Utah Jazz and their early season success?
Yeah, I'd say it's a couple of things. The first being that they didn't make any big
Overarching moves, but what they did was a couple of things. They brought Derek Favors back home and gave a big to back up Rudy Gobert because they've really struggled with Rudy off the floor. And while Favors hasn't necessarily played amazing, he's at least provided some stability back there. The second is they've just gotten healthy. So Bogdanovich is back. Mike Conley's not dealing with those nagging injuries. And so it's allowed for some continuity. Talent is talent, and when you have a ton of talent, a lot of times that trumps things. And I think that's what we're in the process of seeing with Brooklyn, is that even though they might lose depth and even though the pieces might not necessarily fit together amazing, you have three of the top 15 players in the league, and a lot of times we bank on them figuring it out. Whereas Utah, they don't have that, but they have continuity. They've played with each other now for a year and a half, 2 years, and they really understand how to do so. But also just getting Ingles back healthy now, getting Bogdanovich healthy, bringing Favors in, they have a solid 8 to 9 man rotation, and that's all you need. And they're showing that it's been working up until this point. And so I like what Utah's doing. I think Clarkson's the early favorite for Sixth Man of the Year. And it was, 4, 5, 6 games into the season that we were counting Utah out and talking about how they're going to have a terrible season. And we look at it now, and before we know it, they have the best record in the NBA. That's how things turn. That's how things move, and it's just showing that Utah is a top 4 team in the West. I know they're the top team in the West right now, but I don't think many are putting them above the LA teams. And then it's just whether or not you think they're the best non-LA team.
Okay, so obviously the Jazz, after winning 10 straight, I mean, I think a lot more people are starting to have an open eye with them. Personally for me, I've been high on the Jazz as early as before last season. I think at one point, before we saw how all the teams would shape up, I said, they're up there. If it's not going to be the Clippers and Lakers, it could be the Jazz. But I think that now they're starting to put it all together, and that the fact they didn't make a big move isn't like the end of the world, because now they have all this chemistry to build off of. And they're also kind of out for revenge, I think. I mean, you have Shaq, who, I mean, we could talk a lot about what Shaq's been doing recently, but he's been going at Rudy Gobert. He's been going at Donovan Mitchell, trying to get him energized. But I think also the fact of the way they lost, because I know a lot of people think that, the Clippers might be out for revenge this year since they lost to the Nuggets 3-1 after blowing a 3-1 lead, but so did the Jazz. And Donovan Mitchell was probably having one of the most prolific first-round scoring performances we've ever seen. So I think he definitely, wants to build off that, and I think the rest of the team does as well. Mike Conley's looked a lot better this season. Bogdanovich, he struggled to start the year, but I think now he is starting to pick up a little bit where he left off of last season, where people forget, he wasn't available in the bubble. So I think that this Jazz team is someone that you got to look at very closely. And right now, I mean, yeah, we all know the Battle of LA is the big thing in the Western Conference, but right now they look like a surefire top 3 team.
Yeah, I think I'm okay putting them as the third best team in the West. But I'm not sure how much it translates to a surefire thing. I'm trying to pull up the numbers now. They're the best defensive rebounding team. They're the best total rebounding team. Second in 3-point percentage. They attempt the third most 3-pointers. They've made the most of them. Middle of the pack in field goal percentage. 6th in total blocks. 4th in fouls. So that's good there. And then their opponents, they're holding their opponents to the worst, to one of the worst field goal percentages. So that's good there in terms of their their defensive stats. So they're playing really well, right? Like they have the most wins in the league. Um, they're looking like they're a top 3 team in the West. And as of now, I have them as the 3rd best team in the West. But I don't think that's to say that they're leaps and bounds better than the Denver Nuggets or leaps and bounds better than Portland or teams like that, right? Like, I'm not sure that I can justifiably say that. But at this current moment, yes, they are my 3rd best team in the West.
Yeah, and another thing to look at is the fact that obviously a lot of these teams have been getting affected with the safety protocols, and a lot of them have been having injuries, but it doesn't really seem like the Jazz have had too many. Now, that's not to say like once everyone else gets healthy, they'll just leapfrog them or anything like that. But I think we might need a little bit more time before we can make a sure assessment. But I mean, if the season were to head into the playoffs today, I mean, the Jazz would probably be, the next team up there with the Lakers and the Clippers. But I mean, I guess that's why you play a full season. So, I mean, we'll have to see.
Exactly. And to touch just on Bogdanovich, he's averaging less points than his career average. Same rebounding stats, same assist stats, but shooting 9% worse from the field than his career average, 3% worse from deep, 5% worse from the free throw line, and 8% worse effective field goal rate. His PER is 4 points below his career average, so it's clear that he's had some struggles. But I still think he's important because him and Royce are really their perimeter defenders, and we do know that this league is based on perimeter players. So to have him healthy and be able to at least make an impact on the defensive end is important.
Yeah, and same thing with Jordan Clarkson, who's having a 6th Man of the Year caliber season, and Derek Favors, they brought back this offseason. But
yep, and like I said, sorry not to cut you off quickly, but at one point in time, Clarkson is my 6th Man of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could disagree with you at this point. But we're gonna move on to a special showdown between two old teammates. Now they're kind of enemies, or I guess you could say, frenemies. John Wall and Bradley Beal faced off the other day, and while they both, I believe they shot actually the same percentage from the field, which is kind of ironic, but they both had pretty good games. Beal obviously was going to get his 30 points, and I mean, he just dropped 47 the other day, so obviously he's been scoring like a machine this year. But it was John Wall and the Rockets that got the win. What were your takeaways from this game?
Let's start with John Wall and his takeaway. He came out in his post game and said, I just feel like their organization thought I was done. That's why I came out here and did what I did. So he feels that he's basically been betrayed by the Wizards and that they thought that he was nothing but washed, and so that's why they moved him. So that's his feeling there. Bradley Beal, he's just the last 3 or 4 games. He's putting up the numbers, but then you see those videos of him on the bench just distraught, realizing that this team can't win a game. I came across this stat when I was looking some things up, and quite mind-blowing. In the last 10 games that Bradley Beal has scored 40 or more points, the Washington Wizards are 0-10. Free Bradley Beal. Need I say any more? Because this man is doing everything he can, and this team just cannot come up with a W.
Yeah, to go back to the John Wall side of things, I think a lot of people, now that they don't have James Harden on the team, a lot of people aren't really looking at the Rockets the same way. And they're not getting roughly anywhere around the same media attention. But John Wall is still an all-star caliber point guard in the NBA. Just because he's in the Western Conference and just because his team right now is like the 11 or 12 seed, people might forget that. But, I mean, he's still an all-star caliber player. And, I mean, realistically, he had that whole team we mentioned many times, so they have a lot that they could, put together still before we see them at their maximized potential. I mean, Boogie Cousins just got playing time, a lot of playing time in the last few games, and one of them he went crazy. Victor Oladipo just came over in a trade. I even put on Twitter, I still think that he's a top 10 most clutch player in the league. and I'm not afraid to say that. But I think that they have a lot to put together. As for the Wizards, with Bradley Beal, I mean, like you said, he's doing everything he can, but they just can't get over the hump. And another like crazy stat is I believe in the last 18 Wizards road games, Bradley Beal has dropped 30 or more in 17 of them. So like he's basically doing everything he can, getting buckets for his team, and they're still, like last place in the Eastern Conference. Of course, like Westbrook has missed some games, but even when Westbrook has played, they haven't looked the greatest. So I think he's kind of regretting that extension deal right now. And I mean, we'll see if he requests a trade and maybe forces his way out or something. But it'll be hard.
I mean, he's averaging 35.5 points, and we're a quarter of the way through the season, a little more than a quarter of the way through the season, I believe. Like, that's a crazy amount of points, and he's at 30. He's basically averaging 35, 5 and 5, and the team just can't win. It doesn't help that COVID and safety protocols have knocked some players out and injuries. No Thomas Bryant, and so they're playing a lot of G League-esque players, but they should still be able to win some games here. And the whole franchise is just a mess right now, and I would not be shocked if Beal seeks his way out.
Yeah, and I remember like the stat when Harden did it 2 years ago. It was like in the last 30 or so years, the only people that had scored over 35 a game in a season were James Harden at that time, and then Kobe did it in 2006. So Bradley Beal's right now in that club. That's not easy. Those are two first ballot Hall of Famers that he's a part of right now, and he just can't find any success right now at the Wizards. So, I mean, we'll see. Time will tell. Like I say to everything, but we'll see if he eventually gets the trade that everyone's hoping for. Another player though that has been playing a lot better recently is LeBron James, and probably his best game of the season so far this year came against the team that he was most iconic for, the Cleveland Cavaliers. He had 46 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 19 of 26 from the field, which is insane. And then probably even more insane is that he shot 7 of 11 from 3. That's not, something that we normally see from LeBron. What do you think about LeBron's, recent performances at high level and the fact that he's, getting that 3-point shot adjusted to today's game?
Yeah, I think we've seen as his career has progressed that he's not necessarily lost athleticism, but he's just not the athlete he was before. And so now he's doing different things in his game to still be a high-level impact player that he is. And whether that be take more threes or kind of relax, I guess, if you will, more. I don't know exactly how you want to say it, but he's refining his game to make sure that he can last in this league. In terms of that one specific game, for all you guys that didn't catch it, at the end of the third quarter, he took a turnaround fadeaway from the free throw line and missed. And some Cleveland Cavaliers front office executive or employee, however you want to say it, was clapping. He stood up and clapped, and LeBron looked at him, and it looked like there was a little bit of talk back and forth. And then in the fourth quarter, LeBron comes out and just dominates and scores more points than the Cavs do in that whole quarter. And in the post game, that's what LeBron was talking about. He said, he was talking to me and all this, and you know what they say, come at the king, you best not miss. We've seen it too many times where people come here and trash talk or do this. Just play the game. There's no need to sit out here and talk the way these guys do, especially the people on the sidelines that aren't even players. Like, you don't have a place in this league. You work in the front office. You're not the one that's supposed to be trash talking. And so he likes playing back home. We've seen it before when he visits back, whether it be South Beach or Cleveland, he comes out and puts a show on, and that's what he did. And as I said earlier, this isn't the first time we've seen it. But I think it just proves that he's still the best player in the league. And if he's not the best player in the league, he's the second best player in the league. And I think it's pretty clear that he's no worse than the second best player in the league.
Yeah, I think the game against the Cavs was definitely rejuvenation game. It seemed like most of this season, LeBron was doing LeBron things, but it didn't seem like he had that game yet where, he just went off. And, in this game here, he did. You have Skip Bayless, who's saying, like, LeBron in the fourth quarter, he's playing the worst, this is the worst stretch of his career ever. And then he comes out and drops, 21 points in the fourth quarter against the Cavs. So that's insane. And then even the other day, I know they lost against the Sixers, but it just looked like he was much more assertive, trying to, be the dominant LeBron late in games that we've seen before. So, I mean, personally, I like the way that he's been playing the past few games. And, we'll see. The way that he's been shooting the ball from three-point land as well is definitely important because, like you said, he's still athletic, probably more athletic than 80% of the guys in the league, 75, 80% of the guys in the league. But he's, obviously it's not quite the level it was maybe in Miami. So he's had to adjust a little bit. And the way he's been shooting the three-point shot, we'll see if it holds up. But right now it's at a pretty good clip.
Yeah. I mean, we know how we've seen the evolution of LeBron, and at different stages of his point, you can point to his early Cleveland days and say this is the best athlete LeBron, and you can point to his Miami days and say this is just the best LeBron, and then you can point to his second round with Cleveland and say this is the most mature LeBron, and this is the best leader LeBron, and then you can turn to the LA days and anoint something else, and what's been clear is just that as he's gotten older, he's found ways to stay relevant. And it's not like he was going to become irrelevant, but he's found ways to still be the best player in the league. Whether that be taking 3-4 more three-pointers a game, but making sure he's improving on them, or maybe that's spend more time in the post or spend more time facilitating. Whatever the case is, he's found ways to make sure that his game translates to modern-day NBA, and he's done it better than any other player we've seen before.
Yeah, and I mean, even in his prime, winning 4 or 5 MVPs in a row will definitely give you the label as best player in the league. Now, of course, our next topic that we're going to transition to is the guy that won in between there, and that's Derrick Rose. There's been a lot of trade rumors recently. The Pistons, they've been playing him less and less in recent games, but teams like the Clippers and Knicks are still interested. His stats still really aren't that bad. 23 minutes a game, he's giving you 15 points, 5 assists, and 2 rebounds, shooting 44% from the field and 36% from three, which is the second highest in his career. And a career high in steals per game, too, and 1.2 a game. Basically, let's get to the point. What impact do you think Derrick Rose could have on either the Clippers or Knicks or any team that you think should trade for him?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the Knicks' thought process here. Only thing I'm thinking of is just reuniting him with Tibbs. Because he just doesn't fit the timeline, right? And the Knicks have Quickly, and the Knicks have Ntilikina, and the Knicks have Dennis Smith Jr. They have young point guards that one would assume they'd want to develop, and bringing another point guard in the fold doesn't necessarily seem like the smartest thing. Whereas the Clippers, one could argue they need somebody to handle the ball, or they need a true point guard because they have Reggie Jackson, they have Patrick Beverley, but neither one is necessarily Reggie Jackson's a true point guard, but we don't know if he's good enough to be the point guard on the championship team. Patrick Beverley isn't a traditional point guard, but he's a very solid player, and so that's where you think a guy like Derrick Rose fits in. Personally, for me, I love Derrick Rose. I'm a Chicago Bulls fan and one of the biggest ones there is. But if I'm the Clippers, I think I'm looking at George Hill before I look at Derrick Rose. Because I think they need somebody that's more so a facilitator and not necessarily somebody that's looking for their shot more than anything. And I know that's not necessarily exactly what Derrick Rose is, but one would associate Rose as being more of a scorer than he is a facilitator, whereas you could say the opposite with George Hill. But he's still going to be traded and certainly should be traded, and it should be a contender that's looking to get him. We'll see if his market expands in between now and then.
Well, what I will say is that I think for Rose, if he were to get traded to the Clippers, it would almost be, like a similar role to, I guess, James Harden now in Brooklyn. Not that he would average or get 30-point triple doubles or anything like that, but it seems like Harden is, trying to be more the facilitator first necessarily than, the guy that drops 40 points, 50 points on all these games. But I think that he could help both teams. I think if he went to the Knicks, they'd probably, I guess put him with those guys like Austin Rivers and Alec Burks in that veteran leadership role. But I think the Clippers still makes more sense. Um, it's not going to be too hard to match his contract since it's pretty cheap and he's on a 1 year deal. Uh, of course, they don't have probably as many pieces as the Knicks, though. But what I will say is that the Clippers and Pistons have a pretty big trade history together. Remember the Blake Griffin for Tobias Harris deal? Remember that they traded Luke Kennard to the Clippers in the summer. So, or not really technically the summer, but before the season. But you get the point. I think that they have a good history together, and I think that there's a good chance that they could make another trade with one another. In terms of other teams, I've seen people throw out like the Warriors, maybe like a backup to Steph. I don't really know. I really haven't been looking at that many other teams than the Clippers. I mean, the Lakers could as well, but I feel like they kind of already have their lineup set. I think the Clippers, like you said, they need a guy that can, um, you know, distribute the ball, be a true point guard. And I think if Rose got to the Clippers, I think that he would transition more into that style of play than being the guy that, you know, shoots a majority of the time and then maybe pass second.
And for all we know, him going to the Clippers doesn't necessarily equate with the starting spot. Like, I could see Beverly still being the starter and Rose just being the point guard off the bench, right? So it's not necessarily to say that him getting traded means he's going to start somewhere. Like, he could still take on a varying amount of roles depending on which team he does land with.
Exactly. But we're going to move on to another point guard that's been killing it lately. Stephen Curry, who just passed Reggie Miller and moved into second all-time in three-pointers made. He'll probably be on pace to pass Ray Allen next season. But what do you make of this and how Steph Curry's been playing this year?
I mean, best shooter of all time, need I say more? For all you guys watching, I jot down notes that I'm going to talk about, and a lot of times I have, 4, 5, 6 lines worth of notes for each topic, and whether it's stats or just thoughts. And for this one, I put one line: best shooter of all time. Need I say more? Like, this is Steph Curry, guys. He's the best shooter of all time. Let's not mince our words when we talk about it. Let's not think it over. We've seen great shooters in the league. We've never seen Steph Curry before. We still take him for granted. He's a top 3-point guard of all time, could be a top 2-point guard of all time, and some even have him as the best point guard of all time. At age 32, he's still doing ridiculous things. This Warriors team has talent, but they're not as talented as they've been in the past. He's still putting up monstrous numbers. He's still putting up monstrous points. He's facilitating the ball, distributing it to his teammates. He's doing it all for this Warriors team, and right now I'd say this is where we thought the Warriors would be, middle of the ground. But just those two comebacks, the ones against the Lakers and the Clippers, were certainly thrilling games, and I think we're seeing Steph back, and we're seeing Steph back happy, right? Like, he's got Draymond back, he's got Wiggins playing well, got the young gun and Wiseman putting up some good games, and now Oubre is starting to come around. So I think this team is ready to possibly take the next step and find their way in playoff contention. But I like what they're doing, and I like what Steph's doing as well.
Yeah, it's not like it's not even necessarily that he's doing everything, like you said. He's elevating guys like Wiggins. Draymond has a much more valuable role this season than he did last year, basically without everybody. But I mean, like you said, in my opinion, he's the best shooter ever as well. And I don't think anyone. I mean, Curry has like an injury history. I don't wish an injury on anyone, but if it did happen, maybe Harden could catch him, but because he does shoot a lot. But I don't really think anybody in the league right now will pass him unless something drastic happens. I don't even think Dame will pass him. I believe he's quite a bit away. So, I mean, we'll see. Maybe Trae Young, but he's still too young to tell. But basically, like you said, the best shooter ever, and will likely pass Ray Allen as early as next season.
Yep. Nothing more for me to say. I mean, you hit on it, and we know how good he is.
Yeah. But we're going to move on now to our daily picks to close the show. Starting off with January 29th, we have the Clippers and the Magic. Who are you taking here?
Yeah, like the Clippers. I don't think there's much to be said. Decimated Magic team.
Yep, I got the Clippers as well. As for January 30th, we got the Blazers, Bulls. The Bulls took the last one. Are they going to take 2 in a row?
Yeah, I actually like the Bulls here. I mean, injury-ridden Blazers team, not really able to get anything going. I think the Bulls could prove to be too much.
I think it will be a close game with the Blazers' injuries. It's hard to bet against them, though, considering they're substantially above the Bulls. So I'm going to take Portland on this one. As for the 31st, we have the Jazz and Nuggets. Jazz have won 10 in a row, but the Nuggets, they've also won 5 in a row. So who's taking this one?
Yeah, this is probably the best game we have here slotted in daily picks. I like the Jazz. I just like them to keep rolling. Seems like they have some things figured out here, and I expect it to keep going.
Yep, I like the Jazz as well. I think that they're going to be extra motivated because this is the team that knocked them out. So I think they'll definitely want to get this W. February 1st, we got the Kings and Pelicans. Who's taking the W here?
Yeah, B.I. and Zion are going to be too much for Fox and company to handle. I'm going to take the Pels.
I'm going to go with the Kings. It seems like the Kings just win a lot of the weird games that you don't pay too much attention to. And I don't know how many people will be tuning into this one. So I'm going to take the Kings here. But I could very well see the Pelicans winning as well. As for February 2nd, we have the Grizzlies and the Pacers. Who will win this one?
I like Indiana. I think this could be a spot, though, that I wouldn't be surprised if Memphis does pull out the W here. But I'm going to go with Indiana.
Yeah, the Pacers have had a lot of close games lately. Had some against Toronto, one against the Magic. I think this will be close, but I still expect them to beat Memphis. February 3rd, we have the Knicks in Chicago to play our Bulls. Who do you got here?
I like the Bulls again here. Knicks hot start was a fluke. Knicks being a competitive team is not a fluke. But I just don't think that they're necessarily a great team.
Yep, I'm going to take the Bulls on this one. I think that hopefully Levine and Kobe will go off. Maybe a 30-piece by Kobe White. I'll make a bold prediction there. 30-piece by Kobe if he plays. And then February 4th, we got the Warriors and the Mavericks. Who you got here?
Yeah, Steph and Dre over Luka and KP for me. Mavericks still have some things to figure out as they're shuffling parts. Warriors seem to finally have hit somewhat of a groove in terms of rotations and players understanding their roles.
Yeah, I got the Warriors too. I mean, we didn't really address the Mavericks, but recently they've kind of been struggling, and they've probably lost some games that they should have been in or easily won. So I'm going to still take the Warriors until the Mavericks can kind of figure things out. But it's pretty much going to close out all the topics on our show. Any final thoughts?
Nothing big or overarching to add. Looks like we covered the big things that happened in between our last episode and this one. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. And if there's anything specific you guys are looking for us to hit on or talk about, just drop it below in the comments, and we will certainly do so.
Yep, we did have a lot of stuff to cover today. So if we did miss something, be sure to let us know in the comments below. And, we'll probably address it next week. But again, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we're out. Peace.
Peace.